Hello and welcome to Transplant's Take on Sport. My name's Lewis Daniels, and joining me on the podcast today is a fighter in more ways than one. It's kidney transplant recipient and Thai boxing fighter and teacher, Rhys Owen. As someone relatively new to the transplant world, we talked about how he's taken the determination and discipline from Thai boxing into transplant life, his impressive fighting achievements, his plans for the future, and much more. Please stick around for what is a great listen and a chat I definitely learnt things from. And if you're enjoying the podcast, why not press subscribe or follow so you don't miss an episode. Rhys Owen, welcome to Transplant's Take on Sport. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Lewis. Not too bad. What about yourself?
Very good, thank you. We're hoping there's some normality coming back soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, on that topic, you're fairly new to the transplant world. You had your transplant earlier this year, didn't you? Do you want to tell us when that was?
Yeah, it was the 3rd of February. So COVID had just hit in December. And, I knew I was going into hospital. It was supposed to be scheduled for the end of January, but it was pushed back a week. And COVID was all really new. We weren't sure how it was going to affect us. Luckily, the operation was great. At post, there was some issues which I can go on to in a minute. But I suppose rolling back, really, I had a transplant from my sister. Do you want me to talk about the?
Yeah, we may as well go straight onto it. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I'll just ramble on otherwise. You lead me like a good shepherd.
Yeah, let's go. So we'll start with you. We'll go back to before your transplant.
Yeah.
When did you first find out you had kidney problems?
It was when I was 21. I'd left university, and I'm not sure if you've been to university, but you do tuck away a few beers and occasionally put on a bit of weight. And I put on a bit of weight. So I wanted to join a local gym just to shed some of the pounds. When I went to the gym, there was a good lady. I can't remember her name now, but I must really thank her. She took my blood pressure before joining. And I've been to other gyms and they've never done that. But I had my blood pressure taken and she said, wow, that's really high. So she took it again and said, no, that is really high. I think before you join the gym, I would recommend that you go to the doctors. So I went to the doctors, and a couple of tests later, it turns out I'd had CKD, and turns out I'd had it all my life.
I think that sounds similar to me. I was at university when I was diagnosed. I just turned 19.
Yeah.
And similar to you, it was someone else who spotted the first signs.
Yeah.
One of my lecturers spotted that, and a student actually spotted my ankles and legs were really swollen, or beyond regular swelling. I've always had ankle problems anyway, and thought it could be some sort of fluid. That I went to the doctors, and then from there they noticed my blood pressure was sky high like yours. So it sounds a similar story. Young person who's had it all their life.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. The fact that you can have these sort of underlying symptoms and not even know, and it's almost quite scary, really, to think that if your friends and lecturer haven't picked up on your ankles. I'm not sure why they're staring at your ankles, but that's a different. And
physio degree.
Oh well, there we go. Yeah, that helps. I thought it was some lecturer sort of. Anyway, I'll skip over that. And the woman in the gym checking my blood pressure. We could have gone round for years without knowing. I'm almost thankful in a way that I'd found out about it post-university, because I think if I'd have known about it when I was in university or as a child, I just think it would have shaped who I am completely differently. And, we wouldn't be having this conversation today about sport because, I don't know. I just don't think I would have taken part in it as I have done.
It's good that you've been able to do your sport. You said with the transplant you had earlier this year, and your sister was the donor. When did that sort of process start? When did you start working up towards the donation?
So I had it when I was 30. God, that's the thing when you get old, you can't remember your age. When I was 32, I'm 33 now, I'm sure. And I had the workup done, I think it was when I was just creeping into stage 5, probably about, I want to say about 5 years ago, up at Royal Liverpool. And initially, my mum, my older sister, and my brother stepped forward to be tested, and unfortunately, they couldn't. I think their EGFR was a little bit lower than what the doctors would have liked. And my sister, who did donate, was a bit too young at the time. So roll forward a few years, she was a bit older, and she stepped forward and said she'd love to do it. So really thankful.
So with the sort of planned workup as you entered stage 5, did you manage to avoid dialysis?
Yes, yeah, just about. So last when was it? Last July, I had a PD tube put in. I had a cut and cover, sorry. So I've actually got the tube in there, and I've still got it in there now, but it's sort of tucked under the skin, so you can't see it. You can feel it, but you can't see it. But no, luckily I avoided dialysis.
So with the tube that's inside, are there any plans for that to come out, or is that just going to stay there as long as
Um,
it needs to be?
I think with some of the complications post transplant, the doctors did initially want to leave it in there until I stabilised. Thankfully, I've stabilised now, so hopefully we get out. Well, not this year, but sometime next year, hopefully.
It'd be a nice step forward.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we touch on the complications a little bit? Some people might be interested in
Yeah,
what that
of
might be and
course.
how you got through it.
Ask me anything, Lewis, honestly. So what happened was my sister, it was an ABO incompatible donation. So it was pretty much perfect, apart from my sister was a different blood type. So I had to go in for about a week and a half before the transplant operation to have what's called immunoabsorption treatment. So I had a neckline put in about a fortnight before, and then I had probably about 8 or 9 of these immunoabsorption treatments, very similar to dialysis, where you're on a machine for, I think I was on a machine for up to 5 hours at a time. And essentially, it was taking out all the antibodies that would attack the ABO incompatible kidney. And then post transplant, my body was attacking it anyway. The doctors, the function wasn't doing anything for about 2 weeks. The doctors were looking into it, and they thought it would either be AHUS, which is a sort of blood disorder, or they thought it would just need kickstarting with a drug called eculizumab.
Right.
And because I'm Welsh and I had the operation done in Liverpool, they had to write to the Welsh Assembly government to get the drug. Thankfully, they got it. They give me 4 doses of it, and again, that was just an infusion of drugs over about an hour or so. And the kidney started kicking into life. But in that 2-week period between having the transplant and having the eculizumab, the body was just attacking the kidney. So it's damaged at the moment. And currently, my EGFR is about mid 40s, and the creatinine's probably about 150-ish. But it's better than a better kidney function than I've ever known it. So I can't complain really.
So that's the main thing. It's better than before. It's very similar to mine.
Right.
My last test was in October, and I think my creatinine was 100. I think it was 125. So my EGFR is up at, I think it's in the 50s, but it's still 40 is very good still, as far as I'm aware.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was diagnosed at age 21, I think it was my EGFR was 25, and the creatinine must have been up in the 200s. So it's better than I've ever known it. To be honest, it wasn't perfect, and it did, when you're lying in a hospital bed and your numbers aren't moving, certainly not moving in a good direction. It can get to you a bit, but thankfully it turned it around with the wonder drugs. So yeah. When did you have your transplant, by the way?
Mine was July 2019, so not too long before yours. And my mum donated,
Oh,
which I
nice.
think I might have mentioned in the last episode.
Yeah.
So it's fairly similar sort of stories, similar path from young people being diagnosed with kidney disease, progressing to a live donor transplant. And you're all stable now, aren't you?
It's sort of hovering in the 40s. I don't know if it's going to get any better, but can't complain at all.
So we'll go back to your sister who donated, and you told me this week she's a triathlete. Did
She
she?
is. Sorry, yeah.
It'd be great to have her on as well. I'm sure we might be able to sort that out at some point. Did she change her training in any way leading up to the transplant to prepare to donate?
Um, no, she didn't. She just carried on training like a mad woman. And actually, post transplant, she's seen that she's felt fitter than ever, to be honest, which is fitter than even before the transplant, despite her being possibly a bit one-sided, having one kidney now. But
So she's back into sort of fairly normal or normal she can be training now.
yeah, as normal as it can be given the given COVID. Yeah, but health-wise, no, she says she's felt better than ever.
My mum's got back to dancing, so it shows donors. If anyone is going to donate to a relative, a friend, whoever it might be, you can go back to normal life after, and life does go on. You can continue doing what you love to do, back to work, back to training.
Absolutely, and if anyone has got parents, friends, or whatever considering donating, I'd definitely more than happy to put them in touch with my sister. I'm sure you'd be more than happy to put them in touch with your mum, but I think
Absolutely.
it can be quite worrying for some people, can't it? The thought of it, because it's a major operation. But I think if you speak to other donors, you get a whole new perspective on it. Really,
obviously it's got its risks. Everything has, but most people do, as far as I'm aware, anyway, do come through it and do it very well, and they are successful afterwards.
absolutely.
As we've had similar stories, and we've both had family members donate, I wanted to have a brief chat about the tissue licensing meeting, if you remember it, where you go into a room with the sort of the licensing people and discuss it.
Yeah.
So myself and my mum were both sort of taken aback by some of the questions because I sort of struggled to answer some of them. My mum especially, because they asked, "Why would you like to donate a kidney to Lewis?" I sort
Yeah.
of stumbled and was like, "He's my son. I'd like to keep him going, give him the best life as possible." Did you and your sister have similar conversations about struggling to answer those or finding it difficult to put into words why it was
Uh,
happening?
no, I don't think we struggled to put it into words, but we were well prepped by the transplant nurse or the pre-transplant nurse over at Royal Liverpool as to what to expect. But when we were both there, we both felt like it was. I think my sister went in first, and then I went in second, and then you both go in together, I believe, from what I remember. But you feel like even though you're telling your story and your reasons why, you're feeling almost like you've got to convince them, or
Yeah,
got to pretend you're not fibbing, even though you are telling the truth. It's really really strange. But no, in terms of the questions, no, we were just hoping we were saying the right answer. But,
we were the same. It's, as you say, trying to sort of you feel like you're convincing yourself and other people why you're going through with it. But I think it's something that any family member would do for someone else in their family. We said afterwards when we'd finished and we were walking out the hospital, that if it was the other way around, we'd give pretty much the same answers as the other person gave, and we'd be happy to donate to the other one.
well, yeah. And, I mean, I can see why some people might not want to, but yeah, certainly for a mother and son, I can see why. For my sister, I didn't pick on her too much when we were growing up, so she was still happy to donate. But there you go,
It's paid off.
it's paid off. That's it.
So, how's life compared for you before and after your transplant? Did you notice almost an immediate difference or a quick difference? Maybe not with sort of taking a while to get going again, but have you noticed a difference in your health before and after?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think it's probably a couple of months afterwards, or probably even a month afterwards. I was noticing that I wasn't needing to go for naps and stuff like that. So beforehand, I've got three young children. I might get up with the children and then have to have a kip at 11 or 12 o'clock. This is on a weekend. And I feel a lot less tired and more alive, really. but it seems to be other people that notice it more. So my partner really notices it. I speak to my grandma the other day. She says, I look better than I've ever looked, and it's other people I find that notice how well you are.
I found that as well. People saying that your eyes look brighter or skin looks clearer. Mine cleared up fairly quickly after. And I don't know about you, but I sort of saw the world in a new light. Saw houses that I didn't realise were there before when we were sort of driving to the hospital.
Really? Wow, that's
It
quite
was
a
strange.
revelation.
Maybe it's just being more alert, more awake, and more sort of appreciation for life.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see being more awake. Yeah, and being more with it and switched on. I think when you're at the stage you're at when you need a transplant, you sort of have to devote all your energy, your mental energy, to focusing on specific tasks. Whereas when you've had a transplant and it's going well, then yeah, you can take everything and you've got a lot more energy for everything else, haven't you?
Exactly. Speaking of more energy, we'll go to before your transplant and your sport, which I've not had much experience of seeing. I've watched some boxing fights, big fights, and the odd UFC fight. But you're a Thai boxer, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So probably started training when I was about 14, I think it was. So 19 years ago. I've been doing it on and off ever since, really. Um, I got into it really because me and my best friend, I think his older brother had done one or two lessons, that it was good, so we thought we'd have a go as well, and yeah, it sort of all snowballed from that, really. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not an aggressive person. I'm not competitive, as in, I like to go around punching and kicking people, but no, it's a fantastic sport for fitness.
So is it more the fitness that you loved straight away, or the sparring combat element to it?
No, I'll be totally honest. I've never really been massively keen on sparring. I'll spar because it gets you better, and but for me, it was really about the fitness and the technique, and yeah, it's mainly this that really spurred me on to do it.
It's quite. I imagine it's quite intense training, isn't it?
Oh yeah, certainly when you're in a fight camp and you're getting yourself ready for fights, it's you've got to focus 100% on that, because someone at the other side is doing the same and he wants to punch and kick you. So it's quite intense. Yeah.
And for those who might not know much about Thai boxing, how would you describe it?
I tend to describe it as kickboxing, which most people understand, but with elbows and knees, and a bit of clinching as well, which is where you're sort of hugging almost, standing up, and you're trying to knee each other and yeah, make each other cry a bit. So
It, I watched one of your fights that you sent me in the week, and it's brutal. Uh, I wouldn't have the bottle to do it. Uh, have you found you get injured a lot when you've been fighting?
um, yeah, so well, if I go back to when I started fighting, I started fighting. I think it was the beginning of 2018. So I'd been teaching it for a number of years, and then I thought, I've with my kidney disease progressing how it was, I knew it was going to lead to a transplant. I think it was already stage 5 when I decided I would fight, and I just thought, if I was teaching it, I should really live it and experience fights for myself. And I thought, I knew post transplant I would never get the opportunity to do it again, so that's why I started doing it. Um, but in terms of getting injured, uh, yeah, my last fight, which was just before the PD tube operation, so my last fight was the 22nd of June 2019. I actually broke 3 bones in my foot, so not my toes, but in the actual foot itself. Um, which is part of the reason why I wanted to have the PD operation then anyway, because I was off my feet with a broken foot. So
Yeah.
I'd get that done at the same time. May as well get all the jabs and needles in at the same time. So, but no, you can get injured, but thankfully I've only had that one injury.
So the fight you sent me, was that when you were in stage 5 kidney disease?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
impressive.
Well, all my fights have been stage 5. Yeah.
That's very impressive. Got to take my hat off because it looks like it takes a lot of energy to do it, and the fact
Yeah.
you've done it in stage 5 and won is impressive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I'd have started a few years ago, but my record that I finished with was 2 wins, no losses, and 2 draws. So I'll take that. It's not many fights, but like you say, when you've got to devote so much energy and time to it, um, yeah,
Something to be proud of.
yeah, I'm really pleased with it. I'm really glad I did it as well. As I say, I just knew that I was going to have the transplant and that I wasn't going to get the opportunity again. So it was something on my bucket list I definitely wanted to do.
Yeah. So we'll go on to your teaching a bit now. When did you start doing that?
So I started teaching I finished university, lost a little bit of weight. I think it was 2010 I started teaching. I probably taught for about 3 or 4 years. I moved over to where I live now, over in northwest Wales in Bangor, and then I picked it up again in 2017. So probably all in all, it's probably about 6 or 7 years of teaching.
And how, with leading up to your transplant, the fighting and teaching, and with you knowing a transplant is coming, how important did that become mentally?
Um, you mean the knowing the transplant was coming?
So that how important was the training, the fighting, the teaching for you leading up to it? Sort of knowing you've got this sort of stress reliever, energy burn, and that sort of thing.
It was well, again, it just put the fighting into perspective. Really, I just thought, right, I've got to get it done, knowing I'm getting a transplant because I will never get to do it again. I knew I was going to get a kidney in the lower abdomen at the front, and I just knew I would never ever be able to take an impact again. So it really really did spur me on to train really hard and make sure I left no stone unturned. It was almost like Rocky montages I had going around in my head. That's how I felt my training was like. But
So whether you've taken that determination forward into the transplant process, and even now going forward the rest of living with the transplant, won't you?
yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. It did teach me. It taught me a lot about myself, really, in terms of resilience and being really determined to get something done. So that fighting it was an achievement, but for me, yeah, I think definitely the realization of that I could do it and that I was resilient and I could be really determined were two big lessons that I've taken forward. Yeah.
You might have the discipline now as well to know, right, I've got to do this for the transplant. I've got to take this medication. I've got to sort of live this way, look after yourself, that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, as I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people, you have to take your medications at two specific times of the day.
Yeah.
I'm always bang on those times of the day. I've got an app which records how much fluid I drink, and I always drink 4.5 liters a day. And yeah, I mean, outside of my the kidney transplant and the training, my life can be a little bit chaotic. But those two things, I make sure are well organised.
And for anyone who's also had a transplant, what's the app you've been using for the water tracking? I know a lot of people might benefit from that.
It's called Hydro Coach, and I think it was someone actually on the ward in the Royal Liverpool actually suggested that. I think it might have been one of the nurses actually. But yeah, Hydro Space Coach.
I'll have a look at that because it's useful to track. I'm doing it on my notes at the moment, just sort of
Oh really?
deleted what I've drank, typed it all in. I'm still doing that. And for medication, I don't know if you've heard of this one. There's an app called MediSafe, all one word,
No,
and
I've not heard of that one.
it reminds you when to take them, and then so that you don't forget that you've taken them. I know you might be getting this as well now. When it becomes second nature, and a few hours later, you might go, "Oh, did I actually take them?" And you can tick them off as you go
Right.
through. So that's been useful. So if anyone wants to download that, it's not an advert. MediSafe.
Check that out, definitely.
So back onto your teaching. You've got your own. Do you own your own gym?
No, so I met a fella who also does Thai boxing, does boxing as well. I met him in early 2017 in a gym, just a normal weights gym, and he said he was looking to set something up. So I asked if I'd coach with him. So yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment. Is he's the owner and I sort of do coaching for him.
Oh, nice. So, and at the moment, this year has been a tough one for everyone, especially people like us who are more vulnerable. had to stay inside a lot.
Yeah.
Has this year affected your teaching, your business, in terms of both you being vulnerable and maybe having to be more careful than you normally would, and also the restrictions that were put in, maybe forcing you to close at certain times?
Yeah, so it'd been closed really from March, and I think we opened again back in September. But to be totally honest, perfect for me because I've changed my career this year as well as having the transplant. But I just needed that time up until from the transplant up until September to get myself fit again, get myself well, and then get myself fit again to teach. So for me, it's been ideal. But in terms of the gym itself, it's lost revenue and yeah, it's had to close a couple of times now. We've actually had a local restriction in Bangor where we had to close for 2 weeks, and then we had to follow in line with the Welsh restrictions and close again. So yeah, it's been a bit of a torrid year for the training, but for me, it's been ideal. As bad as that sounds,
So the lockdown, in terms of recovery from transplant, sort of been a blessing in disguise.
it has. Yeah, yeah. Like you say, because we're so vulnerable, we couldn't mix. Really, I just had to um, get my own training done at home. Do a bit of road work and a bit of other things on a bag. And but no, it's been perfect for me. I can't complain.
So I suppose a lot of people have found that they've been able to sort of reevaluate their life, focus on maybe on themselves more, on their own personal goals, and
Yeah,
then once everything does sort of go back to normal, you can take that into whatever you do and sort of power forward with it.
well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm a financial planner by trade, and I found that as well that a lot of people taking their time to reassess their life and their sort of financial plans. But it's the same with the fitness as well. People, a lot of people I've spoken to have really thought about getting into the fitness or getting some routine in their life. So no, it's been good for it's been bad for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, but it's been good in other ways for a lot of people as well.
Of course, well, with as you say, some people will have benefited, but a lot of people will have suffered with it.
Absolutely, I'm only talking from my own personal experience, and I do feel bad when I say that it's been good for me because I know how hard it's been for a lot of other people. But yeah, from my point of view, it's been okay.
And when you are in the gym teaching, since your transplant, have you found you've had to adapt your sessions in any way?
Um, Not adapt the sessions, no, but I've had to adapt what I do within those sessions. So in those sessions, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've seen from the video and possibly other videos you've seen, you've got to sort of hold pads close to you or take kicks
Yeah,
to the stomach, to the side and stuff like that, or take knees to the stomach. And it's with the transplant, they're just things that you cannot do at all. So, I'm not sparring anymore. I'm not pad holding um, as much more. Certainly not pad holding how I would usually pad hold. But in terms of the teaching, I'm really conscious that I don't want to let what I perceive as my limitations creep into what I'm teaching. If you see what I mean, I
yeah,
still want
definitely.
everyone to be able to experience and learn the full genre, if it as it were.
Pad holding was, as you mentioned, was something I was going to specifically ask you about. So the ones I did a bit of taekwondo when I was younger, so it might be a bit loose, but um, have you? So I'm presuming the ones you've stopped are the ones that you wear.
It's the ones that you wear, but it's also you can get what are called Thai pads, which sort of you hold them, and it's a thick rectangular pad that goes from your hand down to roughly about your elbow, and I mean, Thai boxing. A lot of it is about power, getting hard shots in. Um, and you're holding the pads, you have to hold them right, your elbows tucked in and hold them to your side, and you're taking
Right.
big impacts, and you can definitely feel it through the pads. Um, but yeah, it's the pads that you wear and also some of the pad work where anyone's likely in the stomach area.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do exactly the same. So have you are you focusing maybe more on? I know you said you don't want to let it affect other people, but are you leaning more towards fitness aspect?
Um, no, in terms of the teaching, No, no, I'm still, we're still gearing people up for fights and sparring and things like that. But in terms of my own training, yeah, it's definitely more about fitness. And I can still whack the pads as hard as I could before. It's just I can't really hold them for other people.
Yeah. But at least you can still do it yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and just going back to what we were talking about sparring. Sparring keeps you sharp. It stops you being lazy, stops you putting your hands down. Sorry, keeping your guard down and all stuff like that. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about really is sort of being being lazy,
Yeah.
getting lazy. But at the end of the day, I suppose if I'm not fighting, it doesn't matter so much. But I still need to appear. I still need to be sharp. In order to pass that on, if you get what I mean.
So with you saying that you've not got plans to fight again, and I'm going to come on to how we got in touch. We found each other through you got in touch with me, I got in touch with you through a Transplant Games sports team.
Yeah,
Have you got plans to compete at the British Transplant Games, World Transplant Games, European Transplant Games in the future?
yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. I'm not sure what sports I do. I've seen some of the sports, but I'm 5'6". I'm about 10 stone, so running, throwing. I'm not sure how good I'd be at stuff like that, but no, I definitely want to be involved in some way.
I haven't been yet myself. Next year's in Leeds, so fingers crossed that goes ahead. But from the list that you've seen, and if anyone else wants to have a look at it, I think it's on the British Transplant Games website for the sports that have been on in previous years. Is there anything that sort of caught your eye, and maybe that the skills you've learned from your Thai boxing might help with?
I don't. Nothing's really caught my eye, but I'd love to. I'm the type of person I'd love to try anything. So I'd love to try any of the sports really. I wouldn't mind if I got a thrashing in table tennis or anything like that. It'd just to be there really, doing sport and being with people in a similar situation. I think it'd be cracking.
Yeah, I think it's from the people I've spoken to who've competed there. They've all said, I think you do 4 events, and they just said try something new, try as many as you want, and it's all about coming together with other people who've been through the same experience and
Yeah,
thanking the live donors, thanking the donor families, and a big celebration of transplants as a whole. Steve was saying on the last episode, which at the time of recording you won't have heard because I only recorded it last week. He was saying that competitors, so the recipients, get a red T-shirt, spectators get a green T-shirt, and all the live donors that go are in a pink T-shirt, so you know exactly who's donated. And he was saying, as soon as when you walk in the area during the games, you'll pass someone in a pink T-shirt, and people will go, "Oh, thank you, you've saved someone's life." So I think it sounds like quite a nice, emotional at times, but a great atmosphere to be involved in.
oh definitely, yeah. As long as the donors aren't expecting us to wash the socks or anything like that, then no. As long as a thank you's enough for them. But no, I imagine it's a really nice, really nice place to be. Really nice atmosphere. Everyone's been through the same thing because that's the thing really from day to day life. You very rarely, certainly in my experience, speak to anyone who's even suffering with kidney problems. Never mind has been through a transplant. So imagine where you're spending. Is it a week or 4 days, or is it over a fortnight? I'm not too sure.
I think the British one is over. I think it's over a weekend. I think last year's was meant to be Thursday to Sunday or Thursday to Monday. But yeah, so a few days, and you're all in the same area, all together.
Well, that's it. I imagine because you've all been through, you've all got shared experiences, haven't you? So you can always even learn about things like different apps that you can use, or I think just sharing experiences and being with people that are similar to yourself is, yeah, it'd be a really nice thing to do.
And since you've had your transplant, have you found that speaking to other people who've been through the same experience of you has helped sort of learn more about it and also to cope with it better?
Yeah, I think pre-transplant and post-transplant, just finding out people's experiences, it sort of gives you a heads up as to what to expect, or like say how to cope with it and how other people are coping with it and how you can learn from them. I remember, I think it was before going in for the neckline, I was in a kidney support group, and I just asked, had anyone had it and what their experience was. And I had loads of people coming back to me telling me about their experiences. Some of it not very good, which is a bit worrying to read. But the majority saying, it was fine. So I think having that support network in place, which is particularly prevalent on social media, is it can help you cope with things and also realise what to expect to a certain degree.
It's a great community to be a part of. Everyone's so supportive. I've found through the cricket team, Transplant Games team that we're involved in, young adult kidney group, various patient support groups that are out there. Everyone's there for each other. Everyone's willing to help out, offer advice, and just be there for a chat, really.
Absolutely, yeah. So how I know you're asking the questions, but how does the cricket work then in terms of not taking impacts to transplant area?
So it's played in as a way cricket would normally be played. A lot of people choose to wear extra protection. So I wear what would be a chest guard on my hip, upside down, and then that covers the whole abdomen, just to minimise the impact. If you do get hit, it just distributes the impact of it and reduces the risk.
I do have something similar. So you can get I'm sure you may know or may not know from boxing and Thai boxing, you can wear like a groin guard. But I've found a groin guard which is sort of a bit larger than I would usually wear, but it goes up to just above my belly button, and it's really quite a thick padded thing. And I tend to wear that a lot of the time, even though I'm putting myself out of harm's way. I think it's still important to have something like that just in case.
Yeah, it's a confidence booster as well, I'd say.
Yeah, I know, I'd agree with that, definitely.
I actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually wore one for a few cricket sessions.
Oh yeah,
A boxing abdo guard. It came up to sort of, as you say, just above your belly button,
yeah.
rib height, but struggled to run in it.
Well, I'd have to hit the ball to be able to run. So.
So, a few more things to ask before we wrap it up. What are your goals, your plans going forward with the transplant?
With the transplant specifically,
Just in general, how you might use it going forward. What you plan to do with it?
well, use it to filter my blood mainly, but no, sorry. Um, just really just keep it as healthy as possible and keep it out of harm's way. I think with the Thai boxing, sort of half of that's been shut off to me now in terms of what I can do. But I'd still like to keep my hand in with that, absolutely. But I think it's also maybe finding some other sports where I can still be competitive but be safe. But really, in terms of the kidney, just keep it going for as long as possible.
Absolutely, that's exactly the same for me. Keep it going and try new sports. Keep that going.
Absolutely, it's really for your mental and your physical health. It's really key that you do at least something. Even if it's only a few walks a week. I think anything you can do to boost your mental and physical health is going to last you in the long run, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the last thing, which I'm going to ask everyone who comes on, I think people like to hear your response to this as someone who's still fairly new to the transplant world. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone facing a transplant?
That's a very good question. The first thing that popped into my head, based on my experience, and it's going to be really negative, is it's not a cure. It might not necessarily take. But that's really that's I'm sorry, but that's the first thing that came into my head. That's a really sort of negative thing.
It's fine. It's very real. I think a common misconception would be that you've got a transplant, you're fine, you're cured. When, although it does improve your health quite significantly in a lot of people, it's still a treatment rather than a cure. There's still a lot that goes on with it. Every day is not the same. There's still medication to take every day for the rest of your life.
I'd say don't let it. Try not to let it get you down as well. I know it's really easy to say, and this is where sport can particularly help, and support groups as well, like we've mentioned. But don't let it get you down. You once you realise that kidney disease and everything that comes with it is more than likely with you for the rest of your life, then you can start to see it as part of you. Do you know what I mean? And cope with it from there.
Absolutely. I think people would really benefit from listening to this, hearing your story. So thank you very much for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have. I hope it's not been too grilling.
No, Lewis, it's been really good, and I appreciate the work that you're doing as well. I'm looking forward to hearing the other episodes. Hopefully, some more interesting people than me.
Oh, no, it's been great. I don't think there'll be many, if any, other people coming on the podcast who do the sport that you've done and teach what you're teaching, and through that, your knowledge making an impact on other people's lives, giving them I imagine it's a big stress reliever, the boxing training.
It is, yeah. My only thing now is, is working out which of the medications sort of thin your bones, and then try not to kick pads too hard once I'm on those. I know it's years away potentially, but no, it's a really good stress reliever. And I would say, if you're not, I'm not an aggressive person. I would say if you can get yourself a bag and some gloves, or get someone to hold pads for you, it's a great stress reliever.
Absolutely. There we go. Thank you very much for listening. Big thank you to my guest today, a fighter in more ways than one, Rhys Owen. I've been Lewis Daniels, and you've been listening to Transplant's Take on Sport.